A major topic of our current unit is meiosis and sexual reproduction. And an essential question that we want to think about is, how does reproduction differ among organisms? Now, there are two basic types of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Let's talk about asexual first, since we have some background from our last unit on that. With asexual reproduction, one parent splits to make offspring. A really good example of this is with unicellular organisms, or organisms that are made up of only one cell. A unicellular organism like a paramecium or amoeba can just divide itself by mitosis, and then bang, you get all these babies with more and more rounds of mitosis. But some multicellular organisms can reproduce asexually too. With a lot of plants, you can just cut a piece from the plant and put it in water, and it'll form a whole new plant in just a couple of weeks. And did you know that if you take a starfish and cut it up into pieces, each piece can become a new starfish? Look at this starfish leg, it's growing a whole new starfish out of it. And the same thing is true of worms. Check out this cute little guy. So this is called a planaria worm, and scientists have done experiments where they cut planaria into all these different shapes, like cut it here and this piece grows into a new worm, and the middle section grows into a new worm, and even the tail. You could cut a worm in half this way, cut just a little sliver, cut it diagonally, a triangle, you could cut a square out of it, and all of those can form whole new worms in just about 2 to 3 weeks. Now, scientists aren't just weirdos doing this to be mean, but what they hope to find is how all of this works so that actually we can figure out how to regenerate parts in people that get injured. All right, I'm getting off topic there. So here's the deal with asexual reproduction. The offspring of the parents are all genetically identical to each other and to the parents. In other words, all the offspring are clones. Now, sexual reproduction is different. You see, when two people love each other very much, they share a special hug, and just kidding. Sexual reproduction is just a process where it takes DNA contributions from two individuals, a mom and a dad, to make an offspring. The cool thing about this is that the offspring is a mixture between the mom and the dad. So two parents each give some DNA, and the offspring is different than each parent, but still similar to each parent in some ways. Just like you don't look exactly like your mom or your dad, but you look like a combination of traits between the two. And that's the huge advantage to sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction creates variation, and variation can help a species survive under difficult circumstances. Can you imagine if all the offspring of a species were the same? What that would mean is that they'd all have the same weaknesses and the same strengths. And if something came along that exposed the particular weakness, then all of the offspring would die, having the same weakness. But with sexual reproduction, all of the offspring have different combinations of strengths and different combinations of weaknesses, making sure that there will probably always be some survivors, even if the circumstances change. Now, the concept of asexual and sexual reproduction relates to what we've been studying. Mitotic cell division is like asexual reproduction. Mitosis is when one cell splits into two cells, and the resulting two cells are absolutely the same. They're identical, with the same chromosomes. Now, mitosis is good when an organism needs to grow by making more cells, repair a wound to seal up a cut with some new cells, or regenerate damaged cells. Since there's a DNA contribution from just one parent cell, this makes identical offspring. So we could consider mitosis asexual reproduction. But there's a second type of cell division that's called meiosis. Meiosis is a type of cell division that creates cells that are all different from one another. Now, meiosis is only used to make two types of cells: sperm cells in males and egg cells in females. What's a little bit weird about this is that sperm cells and egg cells only have half the amount of DNA as normal. But that's okay because a sperm cell with half the DNA will combine with an egg cell with other half of the DNA to make an offspring with a totally new mix of DNA. That, young biologists, is sexual reproduction. So, meiosis makes cells used for sexual reproduction, but only at certain times in an organism's life cycle. Now, that was a big new step, so let's make sure we have a couple of things set here. So, meiosis is a specialized type of cell division that makes sex cells with half the amount of DNA. In humans, half the amount of DNA means 23 chromosomes. So, in males, the sex cells are sperm, and in females, the sex cells are eggs. A sperm and an egg come together at the event of fertilization and merge their DNA. 23 chromosomes from the sperm plus 23 chromosomes from the egg makes 46 chromosomes. So the fusion of a sperm and an egg at fertilization make a new cell called a zygote that has the normal amount of DNA, 46 chromosomes. And once this zygote is made, the zygote will then do mitosis and turn into a huge cell copy machine and make copies of its cells to grow into a mature organism. Did you know that scientists can crack open a person's cells to look at all of their chromosomes and make something called a karyotype? A karyotype works like this. You have to take a person and then you take some of their cells and then you crack open the cell and you crack open the nucleus to get at the chromosomes. And then what you do is you spread all the chromosomes out so they're not overlapping each other and you can see them clearly. And then you take a picture that looks like this. So this picture is a karyotype. And if you count up all the chromosomes, you'll count 46. But also that you'll notice that these chromosomes are paired up. So a person has 46 chromosomes, but there are 23 pairs. And this is because you get one chromosome 1 from your mom and one chromosome 1 from your dad, and one chromosome 2 comes from mom and one from dad, and so on through all of the 23 pairs. And no matter if you're male or female, you have 46 chromosomes, but it's the sex chromosomes that differ in males and females. So you can see that the chromosome numbers go all the way up to 22, but the 23rd pair is XY in this case. XY is the male version of sex chromosomes, and XX would be the female version. So this is a karyotype from a male. One thing you'll also notice are all of these stripes on the chromosomes. Well, the stripes represent genes, which are different spots on your chromosomes for different traits. So you can see the stripes on the mom chromosome match up with the stripe pattern on the paired dad chromosome. And that's because genes are in the same predictable place on each chromosome. For example, the gene with the biggest role in determining your eye color is on chromosome 15. In everyone, in me, in you, in your mom, in your dad, in my mom, in my dad. And it's your combination of chromosome 15s and the genes on there that determines what eye color you have. So this video covered a lot, and let's just recap the major points here. We talked about asexual reproduction, how that takes DNA from only one parent and makes genetically identical clone offspring. Sexual reproduction, on the other hand, is mixing up DNA from two parents to make offspring that are similar to each parent, but different than each parent as well. We contrasted mitosis and meiosis, where mitosis is a cell division that creates genetically identical cells used for these purposes. Meiosis, on the other hand, makes genetically different cells, but only sperm cells and egg cells that have half the DNA because they're going to be used for sexual reproduction, or they'll join together and reform the full amount of DNA. When that happens, that's called fertilization, and the resulting cell is a zygote that has the full amount of DNA, and that DNA is all mixed up, and then the zygote will grow into a full-grown animal by doing mitosis.